Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. We are back on the FFG website, the X-Wing subpage, because we have another article detailing a bit more of Saw's Renegades, the fix pack for the X-Wing and the U-Wing. Now before we start guys, I just want to quickly apologise if I sound a bit croaky or tired. I'm a bit under the weather today, but don't worry, if we pull together as a team, we can make a grand old X-Wing video where I sound fantastic. So let's scroll right down to this, have a look at the spread and see what we've got in this article. So before we go into anything else, let's have a quick chat about what we don't see in this article. First up, we do not have this X-Wing pilot here revealed. It's some kind of unique PS4 pilot. We do have the PS5 and 7 pilot revealed. We'll talk about that in a tick. We don't have the details on the Cavern Angel's Zealot just yet, which is just a non-unique X-Wing at PS1. I'm expecting 19, maybe 20 points. I'm probably leaning towards 20 points, but we don't have that fully revealed, so we don't know the points cost of that. And we don't have this upgrade card here revealed, which is the Corellian Slip, some people are saying. No idea. It could be some kind of upgrade card for the U-Wing. That's what my bet at this stage is. Simply because we have a card fixing both the X-Wing and the U-Wing and a separate modification just for the X-Wing. And that in my mind means there's a good chance that this is going to be something for the U-Wing. It's some kind of torpedoes coming down the bow of a ship or something. If somebody knows what picture this is from, usually FFG reuse their art in different games, please show me because I'd love to know what this is. But I'm sure like most of these last little bits and pieces, we'll see that in the days leading up to the release of this product, so we'll talk about that then. But what's most notable about this is the error in the spread, which we now have confirmed thanks to this article. These two cards here, the Cavern Angel Zealot, should not be Cavern Angel Zealots. They should be U-Wings, or at least we're pretty sure both of these should be U-Wings, because we have another one of these U-Wing pilots revealed, and it's not either of these two. And that is a unique PS4 pilot. We'll talk about that in a tick, and it probably means this last one here is meant to be a non-unique U-Wing pilot. Now, before we continue, I just want to voice my frustration about this, because I really think this is sloppy by FFG. It was pointed out pretty quickly after the original article that this was probably meant to be U-Wing pilots. I don't know why they never went ahead and fixed that original article. I don't know why, knowing full well that this was an error, they went ahead and posted it again in this article. I'm really hoping at some stage in the next couple of days they go back and fix this, because this is just a rendered 3D image. They can edit this, and they have done that before. In the Princess Leia Legion article, they actually went back and edited the spread so it was accurate. And I'm just surprised and disappointed they haven't done that in this either, because really the spread is giving us a teaser of things to come, and if we can't rely on the things in the spread being accurate, it makes it just a little bit less exciting. So hopefully we don't see this happening again in the future. Now, before we talk about anything else in this article, I want to talk about this card here, Renegade Refit, because this is the card that's going to go a long way to help the X-Wing and the U-Wing. You may equip up to 2 different modification upgrades. The squad point cost of each of your equipped EPT upgrades is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0. It takes up the torpedo slot. It costs -2 points, and it's for the T-65 X-Wing and U-Wing only. And this is very, very interesting because it has very different implications on both the X-Wing and the U-Wing. Now, in the case of the X-Wing, you take 2 different modification upgrades. It's pretty obvious what this is intending for you to do. This wants you to take the servo motor S-foils and integrated Astromech, both free upgrades. Basically, both of these cards are fixes for the X-Wing. They give it a lot of free, excellent value. And looking at all the options of what you could possibly take on the X-Wing, I don't see any other competitive choice. I think this is pretty much stapled onto the X-Wing alongside those 2 modifications. Now, I had the question posed to me earlier today on Facebook. Someone was asking, because the servo motor S-foils on one side of the card, and again, we'll talk about that in a tick, grants the X-Wing the boost action, can you then equip it with auto thrusters? And the answer to that, I believe, is no. From my best understanding of the rules of X-Wings, flip cards are assigned after the place forces step, as in you place your X-Wing down the table and then you choose whether S-foil motors is face up or down. And because you do not have that card equipped at that point in time, you cannot take auto thrusters in the build beforehand. That's my best understanding of the rules. I think there is a little bit of grey area to work with there. I'm pretty sure you cannot take auto thrusters alongside this. If you guys have any other understanding about how that interaction works, please let me know in the comments. but that is my answer to that at this point in time until we get some kind of clarification. And just on that topic, why don't we have a look at Servo Motor S-foils? Because it is indeed a flip card, and what I find interesting about this, and what I like about this fix most, is it's giving the X-Wing things that it probably would have always had if these design concepts were around when the original X-Wing was designed. Obviously, the X-Wing was one of the first things to ever enter the game of X-Wing. I mean, go figure. And things like Talon rolls and flip cards make sense with the ship, but they didn't exist back then when the ship was originally designed. So Servo Motor S-foils closed, reduce your primary attack value by 1. Your action bar gains the boost. Treat your 2 banks as green maneuvers. At the start of the activation phase, you may flip this card. Now that makes sense. It reduces the primary attack value by 1. The whole idea of the S-foils, if you guys aren't aware of this in context, is when those wings are closed, it doesn't distribute heat across those engines as effectively as possible, and the laser cannons can't run quite as hot. And that's why you reduce the primary attack value by 1. It actually is a perfect flavor match of what the X-Wing is doing. It also makes the X-Wing a bit more maneuverable. Go figure, you get the boost action and you get those 2 bank greens. Makes perfect sense. And when you open up the S-foils, you get an effectively slower but more maneuverable ship at slow speed. So you get the barrel roll, and when you reveal a 3 hard, you can treat it as a 3 Talon roll that's red of the same direction. Again, at the start of the activation phase, you may flip this card. And it really represents what this ship wants to be doing. Now, it is worth noting that this is not a strict upgrade, because yes, you lose 1 primary attack value when the motors are closed, but let's be honest guys, I can't see any excuse not to take this card. You will take this slight downside in order to get all that upside. You get boosts on one side, barrel rolls on the other. That's fantastic. And you also get Talon rolls on one side. It's interesting because it almost feels like this X-Wing is kind of doing what the T-70 does, but you have to adapt to certain situations and you don't get the full T-70 experience all in one. What I mean by that is it sometimes has boosts and it sometimes has Talon rolls, but it never has them at the same time. In fact, you must flip the card at the start of activation, meaning you don't get a full turn where you can say, use the boost, flip the card, then increase your primary attack value. You have to choose at the beginning of activation what you want the X-Wing to be doing, so you can never get the benefit of both over the course of one turn. What is interesting is we're talking about the start of the activation phase here, and that plays around beautifully with Intel Agent, because a friendly ship with Intel Agent can inform the X-Wing what it wants to be doing. And that's potentially really, really powerful. You've just got to be really careful though, guys, because those 2 banks physically change color. And if you change your mind, you may have done a white maneuver when you really had to do a green maneuver. So you've got to be very, very careful with that. But I love the implication of what Intel Agent does. And if the U-Wing does indeed get the push that it hopefully gets and it becomes competitive, that means the U-Wing is suddenly a really good platform for the Intel Agent, which flies alongside the X-Wing really well. And hopefully these 2 ships gel together really well. But in terms of what this is doing, this is obviously a fantastic flavor match. I do just want to voice a little bit of concern here. I consider the X-Wing as very much the most basic ship in the game that is great for new players, and this does push the complexity a bit more than what I would usually be comfortable with. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of interaction with your own ship and with your opponent's ship, and this isn't exactly the most easiest thing for a new player to get into. I will say though that this is not in a core set. This is in an ace pack. So from that point of view, the complexity is not such a huge issue. Obviously, it's not the first build that new players are going to take, but it's obviously a build that people are pretty much going to have to take if they want to make the X-Wing competitive. So it's going to make the learning experience of those players that want to use X-Wings a bit steeper, and that might be a bit concerning. Not hugely in my eyes, but it is something to consider. Remember, we can always fix ships by just tacking on extra abilities, making them more powerful, but complexity is also an issue, and we can't push that too far. And before we jump over to the pilots, I'm quickly going to point out, yes, we have a high-res image of Saul Guerrero Guerrera. Now, we already knew what this did. I've talked about this in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into this in detail. Suffice to say, yes, Nora, Miranda, all these awesome ships can take this card. I've decided, guys, before the release of this pack, I'm going to do a video on Saw Gerrera specifically and brewing with him. So in the comment section, guys, if you have any awesome suggestions for what to do with Saw Gerrera, please let me know, and we'll do an entire video talking about builds with just him. And we also have the crew option Magvayaro, which is very interesting. Obviously, it's one of Saw's Renegades. It's one of these side characters in the movie that was given a huge Wikipedia entry and a backstory, as every character in Star Wars tends to do, which is awesome. It's universe building, and it's nice to have a character like that highlighted in the game, just to make the whole world of Star Wars feel a bit bigger overall. Magvayaro is very interesting. After defending, you may acquire a target lock on the attacker. And while this appears cool on the U-Wing, I definitely think there are applications there. What I think this is really going to shine on is the Azatuk gunship, a ship that cannot take target locks, a ship that has to be targeted and hammered to take off the board. I think right off the bat in Wolf Warrior, this build, for example, with Zeb Aurelius, I think is going to be a lot of fun. I admit this is probably more casual than competitive, but oh man, this is so much fun. The ability to slam Wolf Warrior into your opponent, shoot your opponent in the face, lower their agility, and Magvayaro means if your opponent tries to target Wolf Warrior, it's going to give them a headache because then he gets target locks. He then might get extra dice to sling at your opponent and can just sink a lot of damage. I love hyper aggro builds. It is my jam in the game of X-Wing, and it's something I would love to try at some stage. But I think ultimately, yes, Magvayaro probably a bit more competitive on something like Lorik. But look, Wolf Warrior is the more fun option in my eyes, and something I'd love to see on the table. Let's talk about the X-Wing pilots that were revealed. First up, we have Levin Tenza. Pilot skill 5 for 25 points. After you perform a boost action, you may receive 1 stress to receive 1 evade token. And this is why there is an evade token in this pack. We thought it might have something to do with the U-Wing, but it's to do with this pilot right here. Right off the bat, really cool. Plays around with the servo motor S-foils. It is worth noting that the boost is a little bit awkward because you basically have to keep the servo motor S-foils closed in order to use that, and then your attack isn't as effective. But it is worth noting that if you do want to have those turns where they remain closed, it makes him a fantastic defender because he can boost to get out of range and he can also receive an evade token, making him very durable. But what I think is really going to be powerful with this guy is the flight assist Astromech. Because if you execute a maneuver and there is no one inside your firing arc, you can then boost to take a shot even with the servo motor S-foils open. And that means you can attack with 3 die and still have that evade token up in order to defend as well, which seems really powerful. And that's why I'm leaning into this build here with wide Renegade Refit, Flight Assist Astromech, Servo Motor S-foils, and Integrated Astromech. A lot of value, and have a look at the points cost of this, guys. This costs 24 points because wide is free. Renegade Refit takes down to 23 points, and Flight Assist Astromech for 1 point on this amazing upgrade just puts it up to 24. That seems insane for 24 points. This is not the best brawler or ace in the world. This pilot skill 5, but it's got a lot of great interaction with the board state. It's got decent firepower and decent defensive stats. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like this make it into one of those rebel swarms. This just looks like a real insane value for 24 points. We also had revealed Colby Sperado. After you perform a boost or barrel roll action, you may flip the equipped servo motor S-foils upgrade card. And this is really cool because this basically means that you can flip the servo motor S-foil and receive the benefits of both sides in one turn. The most obvious interaction for that is having them close, using that boost, getting the benefit from that side during the activation phase, and then having the S-foils open on your attack, which seems really, really good. Obviously, this is another guy that wants to play around with boost and barrel roll, and from that point of view, I would still use the Flight Assist Astromech. I still think that's a fantastic card on this. It means that even when the S-foils are closed, you can still do a barrel roll, and then off the back of that barrel roll, you can still open up the S-foils. And if that's what you need to do to get your opponent in arc, that's just fantastic. And the obvious EPT on this, I think this is a match made in heaven. Intensity, so good on this pilot. You can take free boost or barrel rolls using the Flight Assist Astromech, which means you can take that focus action if you need to flip it face up again. This just seems like a no-brainer to me. Again, criminally cheap. 26 points for a really solid PS7 X-Wing with a lot of great interaction. Have I mentioned I think this fix is just really, really pushed, in case you guys weren't aware. This just looks really good. There's no two ways about it. It looks like it's going to be possible to field 4 X-Wings with upgrades, or 2 X-Wings with upgrades alongside like Ezra Bridger, Captain Rex, all that kind of stuff. It looks like X-Wings are just going to slot so beautifully into those 4 Rebel builds, and as they should. It's the X-Wing. It's the most iconic Rebel ship in the game, so there are no complaints for me on that front. And while we're chatting about builds, I'm just going to bring up here the full spread of X-Wing pilots that we currently have. Obviously, the PS4 unique pilot not revealed yet, and the Cavern Angel Zealot not revealed yet, but I think it's pretty safe to assume the Cavern Angel Zealot will be at least 1 or 2 points cheaper than the rookie pilot, and that's super relevant as well. We can even possibly get 5 kitted out X-Wings on the board, which just seems absolutely insane to me. I think that build is going to be very, very legit. And when I look at things like that, I just think to myself, wow, I think FFG really want to make sure that this fix takes, because they don't want to stuff up the X-Wing fix. That's my impression here, and it certainly makes a lot of sense. But in terms of the way these guys fit into the current spread, it looks like they're costed at around about the same threshold as every other X-Wing pilot so far. Colby Sperato is 26 points, just like Garvin Dreys or Jack Porkins, and Levin Tenza 25 points, just like Biggs Darklighter. Obviously, at this point in the evolution of the game, probably going to be more impactful than Biggs Darklighter due to that nerf. But what I find really interesting here is the rest of all the pilots here. Garvin Dreys, Wes Jansen, and Wedge Antilles in particular are pilots I'm looking at. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this the push that these guys need? Wedge Antilles is obviously the most exciting one, being PS9, having that amazing ability. Reducing your opponent's agility is no joke. I know I say that a lot, but this is one of the most powerful, aggressive pilot abilities in the game. And maybe just this is the push that Wedge Antilles needs. And look, rightly so, it's Wedge Antilles. He's an iconic pilot. This is an iconic ship. We want to see these guys being flown. And Wes Jansen, Garvin Dreys, a bit of a different style of build here. These are obviously part of the core alliance, so they're more about helping out their buddies. The Cavern Angels are more about helping themselves. Obviously, they're basically nearly scum in terms of the way they've been built, which makes a lot of sense in terms of the context. And I'm just really curious to see what happens with these pilots. I think, again, before this pack comes out, I'm going to have to make a separate video talking about X-Wing builds in particular. So guys, in the comment section, let me know what you think of this. Let me know what kind of builds you want to see, because this is going to be very, very exciting. This pushes the X-Wing into some very interesting space, both in terms of creativity and competitiveness. So I really want to see how far we can push this stuff. Let's move over to the U-Wing, because yes, we have a couple of pilots revealed here as well. Saul Guerrera, when a friendly ship at range 1 to 2 attacks, if it is stressed or has at least 1 damage card, it may reroll 1 attack die. And that's really cool. That's a very, very powerful ability, because obviously there's a lot of builds in the Rebel faction that want to take stress anyway. Think like Kayan Farlander, Ezra Stressbot, that kind of stuff. And this is going to fly beautifully alongside Saul Guerrera. And when looking at builds for Saul, I originally thought, okay, well, obviously friendly ships at range 1 to 2 includes himself, so maybe we should think of ways to give him stress. And what occurred to me is that's a little bit clunky. We can take things like Wired, we could take Push the Limits or Rage. Rage doesn't get a whole heap of value out of this guy because he wants to reroll at 1 attack dice. If he's using Rage, he's already rerolling 3 anyway, so it doesn't feel like the best way to capitalize off his ability. And what's occurred to me, at least early days, is that he doesn't really need to push his own ability that much. The U-Wing already has a full stop red maneuver, and that's really good for brawling. Obviously with the pivot wing title, it can turn 180 degrees, and if you utilize that correctly, you can make sure you get shots turn after turn, and that alone can stress out your ship. So that's working really well. And what occurs to me as the right way of building out Saul Guerrera is Veteran Instincts, Fire Control Systems, Renegade Refit, Bistan, Intel Agent, and the Pivot Wing title. And that totals 29 points. And look, I look at this and I think, look, this isn't entirely synergistic. This is more going for one of those value builds. And I think that this is probably a good push for the U-Wing. The U-Wing couldn't do anything like this for 29 points previously. A PS8 brawler that can help out his buddies seems really, really potent. It's not especially spicy in any way. It's not giving you any insane combo with your other ships or even within the same ship itself. But I like the idea of just playing off the value of that ability, because that ability does not really need much of a push to work. And it's an ability that works well with other ships anyway. And from that point of view, you, this is the kind of build I think Saw Gerrera is going to shine in. The other card that was revealed was this guy here, which does not appear on the spread. And before we move on, I just want to say I really like the art on this one because it's showing Saw's Renegades invading some other planet. It doesn't look especially like Jeddah with those purple plants, and it looks like they're doing some kind of, nefarious mission for the Rebellion. Just a bit of universe building, just a nice touch, which I quite like. This is benthic 2 tubes. PS4, no APT for 24 points. After you perform a focus action, you may remove one of your focus tokens to assign it to a friendly ship at range 1 to 2. And this one's a bit more awkward. I'm not really sure what we should be doing with this guy. Obviously, Recon Specialist feels like a strong option for this. It means when you take a focus action, you can keep one of your focus tokens and give another one to a friendly. That makes a lot of sense, but that's already pushing this up to 26 points alongside the title and refit. When we look at modification and crew options, this is sitting around about the same points cost as Saw Gerrera. And honestly, I don't think the value is quite there to sort of compete with other things like Saw Gerrera, even some of the old U-Wing pilots. I don't really love what's going on here. In the comment section, guys, if you have some better ideas for this, if you think I'm wrong and you think there's going to be some great ways of utilizing it, please let me know, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I'm just not quite seeing it myself with this pilot. But before we move on, I just want to have another quick chat about Renegade Refit, because it has a very interesting interaction on the U-Wing which no other card in the game of X-Wing does. Obviously, multiple modifications is becoming a thing. Royal Guard TIE, Vaxi, and now Renegade Refit. Yes, we now have multiple ships that can take multiple modifications, but this is the first ship that is a large base ship. And that means for the first time, we can take multiple copies of Anti-Pursuit Laser, Ion Projector, Tactical Jammer, all those in combination with other modification, and that is certainly significant. And that's led me to think, well, is there a way we can push that? Which led me to have a look at this build here with Heftober. After an enemy ship execute a maneuver that causes it to overlap your ship, you may perform a free action. Now, this is one of the old U-Wing pilots, but it plays around perfectly with anti-pursuit lasers. And for the first time ever, we can actually put 2 of them on there. So this build here, basically before this pack comes out, could have only ever taken 1 anti-pursuit laser and Cassian Andor. Cassian Andor, another great way of trying to force your opponent to fly into your ship. And Boshek, another annoying way of forcing your opponent to bump turn after turn. And this is the first platform that can take 2 anti-pursuit lasers, plus you get a free action if your opponent bumps into you, meaning you can take a target lock or a focus, and that's no joke. That can be really potent in certain situations. And let's also not ignore the fact that this guy has a full stop, which just means he can do this constantly. If he has any way of removing that stress, he can basically fortress your opponent and force them to slam into the ship over and over again. Boshek has a very interesting interaction with large base ships, because there are some ships that simply cannot clear the large base ship if it is in situ, and Boshek forces it to turn the dial over and over again, especially with Cassian Andor, which makes your opponent have to double guess the Boshek and the Cassian interaction every turn, and you can just hammer them with those anti-pursuit laser. I don't know if this is competitive, but it's certainly interesting. It's certainly something I want to try. And it's just an interesting interaction which we've never had in the game before. It might be silly, it might be a bit of casual fun, it might do terribly in tournaments, but it's certainly something to try out. I'd love to see if anyone can try and break this concept. But just one more thing I want to point out with these U-Wing pods. Here is all the U-Wing pods we have revealed, and what's interesting about the U-Wing in this pack is every pilot of the same pilot skill of the previous U-Wing cost 1 point less than its predecessor. And that means, despite the fact that it looks like this ship hasn't got quite as much love as the X-Wing, we do have to point out that it does have yet another point reduction, and that could be very significant. There's a great chance that that final card could be another generic pilot, could be PS1 just like the X-Wing, and could be significantly cheaper than the Blue Squadron Pathfinder. And maybe this ship will become a fantastic platform for multiple modifications and crew, and just have great combinations like anti-pursuit lasers, Intel Agent, inspiring a recruit, and it could potentially be on the board for a very, very cheap cost. And that's something to think about. Obviously, we'll have that revealed to us when somebody opens up the pack and shows us, but that's something to think about moving forward. And the U-Wing is in a very interesting, precarious place right now. I think this pack is definitely going to fix the X-Wing, and I think it is most likely going to fix the U-Wing. We just need a little bit more revealed before I make my final judgment on that. And yes, that was everything revealed in this article. Super, super, super hyped for this pack, guys. Is worth noting at the bottom of the page here, we don't have a date or quarter given for this, which means it may have been pushed back, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we have some kind of release alongside the Han Solo movie. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, in the comments, guys, more builds. Let's get some more ideas, because I want to make a few more videos on some of these specific upgrades and pilots and really see how far we can push this as a community. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and I will catch you later.